In this video, I am going to give a demonstration of how to set up an exception schedule using the new Metasys user interface, also known as MUI. The first step in this process is to select the building that you are going to be adding a schedule to. I am going to click that building, and then the next step is to click on the floor that the room is located on. Once I click into the floor over on the right, and this is just currently how we have our system set up. Your organization may be a little bit different, but this is what we are finding that seems to work for us. I am going to click the two arrows that are pointing up in opposite directions and expand out my schedule window, and it's going to give me all of the related schedules to that floor. So I will then simply click on the individual schedule that I need, and it will pull that schedule up into the window. Of course, the first section that we see here is the normal weekly schedule that the room would run if there was no exceptions added. You can kind of see the difference here with these diagonal lines running through the times on this schedule, and that is an indication that for this particular day there is an exception schedule running. Now, to add an exception schedule, I'm going to scroll down to this section here, and this is exactly where I will be adding my exception schedule. What I'm going to do is to add a scheduled event for the 12th, so I'm just going to hit the add exception schedule. Since this is only going to be for a single day, and this is something that is a little bit unusual until you get used to it, but I'm going to be selecting long running, and what this is going to do is allow me for a single day to have the schedule occupied. Now if I was to select this, for example, if I were going to let something run all week, I would actually need to use the daily option, because if I leave this in long running and the time frame that I set for my occupancy, the event will remain occupied until the end date time set within the system. And just as an example, I'm going to pick a couple of random days. We will go today, and we will go approximately 8 o'clock, and then I'm going to go through, let's go through next week, just as an example, and set that to PM. And I'm going to click next, and we'll get into some more details about these screens shortly, but I want to show you how this will affect the schedule for this particular day. And you can see I'm going to review these various days, and what you will see is that each of these days it is keeping that occupied 24/7, and that's not exactly what we would want. If I was wanting to run something from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. for a week or whatever, if I use the long running, it's basically going to keep that room occupied from 7 a.m. from the start date until 3 p.m. on the end date. Instead of it going unoccupied each afternoon, it would remain occupied for the full time. So that is why we do not want to use that when using a series of days, but we do want to use it, however, if we are going to be going on a single day. And if I am back at my screen here, I'm simply going to select the date that I need, which in this case is going to be the 12th, and the time that I need is what I'm going to enter here. I'm just going to click this, and I need it to come on at 9 a.m. and I'm going to click off of this now and then go to my end date and time. And of course I want it to end on the 12th at 5:30 p.m. Now, one of the things that I need to do here is, if I click in here, you can see that this is kind of grayed out. And the reason is it's just something within Metasys when we're trying to set this up, that it does not automatically flip the AM and PM when we try to schedule these. The current time is past, past 8 o'clock, so it wants to default to a time period past our current time. So that's something that is a kind of a glitch within the system. But what we will need to do is simply go back here, and the first thing we would do is flip the AM to PM, and then I can come in and select the time that I need, 5 p.m. And once we have our start date and time selected, we can then hit next. And of course the value that I want is of course occupied, and then I hit next. This brings me to the review screen. This review screen, I have the option of reviewing any of the days that I've scheduled simply by clicking the calendar icon and then selecting the day. And you can see the date here, the 12th, we have our schedule from the time that we selected. Okay, so then I hit save, and it's going to bring me into this window here, and then I can hit close, and then you can see that it has added that exception schedule to the list. If I needed to go back in and modify this any, I could simply click this little icon here, and I can change the times from this window here. Okay, and that's the basic step of adding a single day exception schedule to a room. Now we are going to be adding an exception schedule that is going to run consecutively for a couple of days. So again, I will select my building from the left hand side. I will then select the floor, and this again is how we have our system set up, and it seems to work well for us. I'm going to hit the arrows here to expand my scheduling pane, and then I'm going to select the particular room that I want. And inside here you can see we do have a couple of exception days for this week, indicated by the diagonal lines. I'm going to scroll down to my add exception option. I'm going to select that, and this time I am going to select daily because I want this to run for more than one day. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to select my start date here, which will be the 13th for this event, and I want it to run through the 14th. Okay, that is my start date and the end date. If I needed it to go longer, I could select whatever day I needed. If I wanted to run a couple of weeks or a couple of months even, I can select that from here. I will then hit next, and I'm going to get to this panel here where I will add my times. I will select add event, and I will click on the clock icon, or you can just type it in. Just for me, it seems to work well just by clicking on the icon, and I'm going to select 8 a.m. and you can see it has defaulted to midnight. We know we're not going to be running this that late, so then I will click the icon again to select the end time that I need, which is going to be 10:45 p.m. And of course our value will be occupied, and if I needed to go in and delete this or whatever, this is where I would do that. I would select, hit that trash can, and it would delete out whatever I add in here. If it was something where I was going to be unoccupying, that's where I would select this tab here. You need to make sure that the value is occupied for these time frames, because some schedules, depending on the controller they are attached to, may default to unoccupied, so be sure to check that. I am now going to select next, and we are going to review those days. I will click the 13th, and you can see there is the schedule for the 13th, and when I select the 14th, we see that the times are the same. I will then hit save, and it will of course save that to the system, and you can see that exception schedule here. And again, if I needed to modify the times, If they called and said that they are not going to be running that late, or if they're going to be going in earlier, I can do that here. Okay, and the schedule for those two dates is now set up within the system. Another very useful feature within Metasys MUI is the ability to group schedules. For example, if I have a series of rooms that are all going to run the exact same time, instead of having to go in and enter each of those rooms individually, I can simply select the rooms that I need from the list. For example, simply go through and check here. And once I have those rooms selected, I can go up to my Actions tab, hit Add Exception, and it will, of course, give me the same options that I had when I scheduled a single room. And this is going to be for a single day, so of course I will leave this in the long running option. I press Next. I will then select my start and end dates and times that the way that I normally would. Again, remembering to click the PM first. And when I hit Save, it will write that value into all of those schedules that I had selected. Now, one thing I want to mention is that this will only work if the type of controller that each of these schedules is connected to is identical. To give you an example of what can happen, I'm going to go down to another building just to show you one way that you may have an issue. For example, if I wanted to select all on these and hit Add Exceptions, it is going to give me this particular window here. And you will notice that it's going to give me a couple of options on this, and basically what this is telling me is that there are different types of devices that are attached and associated with these schedules. Different types of devices, different generations, different types of controllers, that sort of thing. In a situation like this, you are better off scheduling these when making sure that each of the devices is identical, because you can cause some issues in the schedules. It may not function the way that you anticipate it to function. So what I can do here is simply group the ones that I know are identical and add the exception that way. You can see here, this time it came right into this window here instead of asking me the state that I wanted for the schedule. This is what you want to see when you group a series of schedules together. If you get that other screen, then you're going to be better off going in and scheduling those individually, or determining which schedules are identical or for identical controllers. That way you can group them. Another very useful feature of the MUI scheduling is that when you are in this view where you have all of the floor schedules visible, you can actually go and review all of those based upon a particular date by clicking the calendar. And if you wanted to know what was running on any date that you select as far as what those schedules were, you can see there you simply select the date that you wish to review, and it will show you the entire floor, what those schedules are for that particular date. To delete out an old schedule, the only thing that I need to do is out to the right of that schedule is to press the trash can button, and it will give me the option. You can see here it will give me the option of making sure that I want to do this, because once you delete a schedule for a particular day, it is gone and there is no getting it back. So it's basically popping up this window. I hit delete and it will say that it has been successful, and you can see that that schedule is gone. And here again, another one. I press the trash can. It gives me the option again to make sure that this is what I want to do. When I press the delete, it will again remove that expired schedule.
Another option within setting up the schedules is the ability to add an exception based upon the day. For example, if I wanted to add an exception to this room, the weekly with start date, I can select this option, select next. It will give me the option to select a particular day. If I want this to start a couple of weeks from now, or just whenever, or if I want it to start just this week, next week, it really depends on what you want it to do. You can select that option here, and then you can select the number of occurrences. For example, if this is something that is going to happen approximately for 2 weeks or 3 weeks on a Sunday or Wednesday, or just whatever day you've selected here. If we were going to have an event every Wednesday for the next 3 weeks, I can select the number of occurrences here. And then of course go through and set up my schedule as I normally would. I also have the option of setting this up on a every day of a week with no end date. If I wanted to have an event that happened every Monday or every Tuesday or whatever day of the week I needed, I can select that option here. If I have the schedule attached to a calendar, I can select that calendar by clicking on it underneath the exceptions tab. It will appear there if it is connected to a particular calendar, and then I can go in here and select a date or a series of dates depending on what is going on. And just to give you a better understanding of that, let me go to another building and show you a little of how we can use those. For example, if we have events in certain buildings, we actually have the ability to turn on many air handlers, many spaces based upon a selected date for the building. For example, if we have a major event in one of our buildings, which of course we do have buildings that are regularly used for events and things like that. For example, games, ball games, and that sort of thing. Inside the schedule itself, we actually have it attached to a few different calendars, and just bear with me as the window pops up. And you can see here we have an event calendar, a run all air handlers, and a holiday shutdown calendar. What the event calendar gives us the option of doing is simply taking the schedule of events and going through and simply selecting additional days or whatever date that we had. For example, if you had a schedule for all of your home games, say if it is a gym and you are scheduling air handlers for ball games, you can literally sit down with your game schedule, go through here and select the dates that you need. And this same calendar is actually attached to multiple schedules within the building. Just to show you, here's another floor that I can select. Just bear with me a minute. The internet connection is not the fastest, but it will, if I can get it to pop up. But we have that same calendar attached to multiple different air handler schedules, multiple different area schedules. And what it will allow us to do is, instead of having to go through each of those schedules and add an exception schedule when there is an event, we can simply have that calendar attached to each of the schedules. And when we select a day on that calendar, as you can see here, event calendar, it will then run for whatever time period that we put in this area here. As far as holiday shutdown calendars, if there are periods where a building is closed for the holidays for whatever reason, using this gives us the option of turning off everything. And basically this is just another exception schedule that instead of using a date or something like that, we just add a calendar. Okay, that's the only difference. And then we name it whatever we want, once we create a calendar object. And I do have other videos on creating schedules on my channel, so go over and check those out. But guys, this is just some of the basic steps involved in setting up schedules and modifying schedules using the Johnson Controls Metasys user interface, also known as MUI. If you have any questions, leave those down in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out the links down in the description. Anything you buy through those links does help to support the channel. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Visit my website at systemcontroltech.net, and we will see you next time.